All right, NAL Playdate number 8 predictions. So it's really unfortunate that these days are back-to-back. I would have liked to have done more stuff going into Playdate number 8 because we've eliminated several teams from major contention. There's only 6 left. I would have liked to have done another possibilities video. Okay, so let's talk about what happened in Playdate number 7 a little bit. This is the first day I got all 5 correct. I also think, in hindsight, it was probably the easiest day to predict, and I guess it's because there were no upsets. Astralis beat Mirage, Beast Coast beat TSM. You could look at that as maybe a little bit of an upset, but I don't think, given what has already happened this stage, it was terribly surprising. Maybe the margin by which Beast Coast beat TSM was a little bit surprising, but the result I think was probably the predicted one. Xset over Dark Zero. This one was pretty close to even. I did think Xset was a bit favored, so again, not an upset. Xset defeating Dark Zero. Auction over Sonics was expected. This was quite a close one. Sonics look better and better as the stage goes on, so they might throw a wrench in the plans of Space Station. That is going to happen on this playday. But anyways, it was Auction over Sonics, and then it was Space Station over Parabellum. Another close-ish match. Space Station didn't have to sweat too bad. It didn't go max regulation or overtime or anything, but still, Parabellum looked like maybe they could win the game or at least take it to overtime at some points. Okay, so right, those were the 5 for that day. I think I'm on about 70%. I think I'm at like 69.5 something percent, something like that. So doing pretty well. I definitely got padded from this day, and I believe I'm still higher than all of the casters and the coin and the analysts and whatever. So pretty good. We'll see if I can maintain that. And probably if I just predict all of the favorites to win, I might just do it. So we'll see. Okay, let's actually get into Playdate number 8 predictions. Dark Zero versus Oxygen. So there are several really important matchups coming up. Any of the top 6 can still make it. Astralis and Oxygen are like basically guaranteed. I think there's really narrow chances of them not making it, but for all intents and purposes, I do think that Oxygen and Astralis are pretty much going to the major, and then it is up to Space Station, Dark Zero, Xset, and Beast Coast to decide who else is going. All of those teams I think are within like 4 points of each other's, or 3 points. Isn't it like 15, 14, 13, 12, I believe, with Space Station, no, with Xset on top of that and with Dark Zero on the bottom. So, right, the top of that little glut is only 3 points ahead of the bottom, so that's just 1 game away, 2 games left to be played. A little bit more important for Dark Zero, but Oxygen, of course, to not make it is going to have to lose both of their games, and then some other things are going to have to line up. So if Dark Zero, or rather if Oxygen can get at least 1 point, they'll be going, so they do want to get at least a 1 point on the board. I'm sure they also want to lock in first place if possible. They aren't in first place. They're tied on points with Astralis, but Astralis has the better round differential. So enough dilly-dallying on this one. I'm just going to go with Oxygen. Dark Zero could take it. I mean, they're fighting for more. Oxygen still wants to lock in the major, but they probably don't even need to win to do so. It'll probably just line up for them anyways. But yeah, Oxygen has looked incredible, and Dark Zero has looked definitely shaky. They, I don't think, are locked into being a top team at the moment. They've taken some bad losses, had some shaky wins. They're sort of in the middle. They're not bad by any means, but they're just not like top of the table at the moment. And I guess to make it back into that top 4, they're going to have to get a decent number of points from these last 2 playdays. So I'll go with Oxygen, even though Dark Zero might put up quite a scrappy fight. We'll have to see. Space Station versus Sonics. This seems like it should be easy to predict. Space Station is what, like 4th place right now. Sonics are still in 9th place, I think. And, based on how the stage has gone, Sonics have only won the 1 game. They haven't taken any other losses to overtime or anything. But, they did look really good against... Who did they just play against? Against Oxygen. They almost went to overtime. They got 5 rounds on them. So they've gotten progressively better. I'm sure Space Station isn't very happy to have to play Sonics at the end of the stage because everyone else seemed to be getting freebies against them at the beginning of the stage. I'm still going to go with Space Station. They have so much more to play for. I'm sure Sonics will still play their hearts out. Play to win, not necessarily just to stop Space Station from going to the major, but just to get points on the board and just to play for the sake of playing, for the sake of the game and whatever. But I imagine Space Station will still be able to take this. They will probably they're going to bring their A game. They really need to get points on the board to secure that top 4 position. So I'll go with them. TSM versus Parabellum. This one doesn't actually matter for major qualification. Neither of these teams can make it, but of course you still want to get points on the board, get more money, more SI points, likelier to go to the NAL finals and avoid relegation at the end of the season. This is tough to call, though. I guess I'll go with Parabellum. I mean, they've just been better than TSM this stage. They've just accrued more points, and TSM did just look kind of lost against Beast Coast. And maybe a few rounds could have broken TSM's way, but I don't know. It just seems unlikely that they'll they'll recover at this point. Maybe they could have recovered versus Beast Coast, but given that they still looked pretty shaky versus them, and this is only one day later, I'll give it to Parabellum, who've looked not fantastic by any means. There is a reason they were eliminated from major contention, but they've definitely provided some upsets, given us some good games. So I'll go with them, and it could go either way. I mean, TSM, I think, has the possibility to probably just win any game, even if they're not the favorites at this point. Mirage versus Beast Coast. I mean, you just can't vote for Mirage. Maybe they'll upset, maybe they'll win, but Beast Coast has a lot to play for, and Mirage hasn't looked especially good. They got the one win against TSM, so they're not hopeless, but you know, you just can't predict them. So gonna rock with Beast Coast. So I think that's a pretty easy prediction. That might be the if you had to go with like a lock for the day, that's probably it. I think any of these three could reasonably go the other way, but I'd be very surprised to see Mirage beat Beast Coast. And all right, so last game of the day, Astralis versus Exit. Two of these red guys going head-to-head. I think this is the game of the day. At the end of the day, maybe Dark Zero versus Oxygen will have been closer, but at this point, this looks like maybe the better matchup. These two are a lot closer in terms of points. I think, Astralis on 17, Exit on 15, so I think it's first versus third place, and Astralis almost a lock to go to the major. Exet's pretty likely, but they probably still need a few more points, so they would like to get them right now and just make sure they're going to the major. And okay. So I do think this one's tough to call. Of course, Astralis at this point look like the favorites. Maybe not the heavy favorite or anything. They do just have more points on the board. And so I guess like I did yesterday, I'm just going to look at a few things, the map breakdown and whatever. So this is something I'd like to do more of, but I'm also trying to keep the length of the videos down. I think when people see really long video lengths, it sort of is a deterrent, even though some people do enjoy when I go really in depth. So we're going to cut to document, the Google Docs, and we'll take a look at a few things. All right, so let's try to make this fairly quick, not belabor most of the points. Over here, we have the matches that each of these teams have played in order. Over here is the same information, but just organized so that you can see how each team did against any specific team. Over here are the number of times they've banned each map, and here are my guesses for where we're going to play. These are just a few notes that I made. Okay, so we'll start by considering this. I think a lot of people have been really recognizing that Xset is super hot on a streak, but Astralis is on the exact same streak in terms of number of games wins. They're on a 5-win streak. I guess they did lose the 1 point versus Dark Zero. I think the Xset thing gets more attention because they're a newer team, and also their streak started out super, super hot with a 7-0, 7-1, whereas Astralis's beginning of the streak was a 7-5, 8-6, but still same streak nonetheless. And I guess even Xset's games have become progressively closer, whereas Astralis's have become relatively less close with 2 really close games, and then 7-3 and 7-1, 7-2. So the most dominant ones here at the end, whereas 7-0, 7-1. If you switch to 7-2 and a 7-3, it becomes strictly less dominant for Xset. So do keep that in mind when we're taking things into context here. They've played against all of the teams, each of them except for Astralis hasn't played Beast Coast. Xset hasn't played against Oxygen. If trends keep up, then Oxygen should beat Xset and Astralis should beat Beast Coast. Keep that in mind. Each of the opposite team did that exact same result. So versus Dark Zero, pretty similar result. Each of them won by 2. I guess the Xset's game didn't go to overtime, so they maybe are slightly better in that regard. Mirage, exact same scoreline. Parabellum, pretty dominant win for each, slightly better for Xset. Same thing with Sonics. But then a victory for Astralis versus both SSG and TSM, whereas Xset lost to both of them. So obviously, I give the Astralis column being more impressive, but you do have to take into account perhaps, or rather, you also have to take into account that it might become more impressive if they do get the predicted win versus Beast Coast, and Xset gets the predicted loss versus Oxygen. So this all makes sense based on the fact that Astralis is above them on the scoreboard. They have more points than them. And then these are the number of times that they ban them. I'm not going to go over each of them. I'll sort of mention them as I talk about this. Okay, so Clubhouse and Cafe are basically each of these guys permaban. Astralis has banned it every time. 4 of them it was their first ban, and then Xset, they banned Cafe every time except for against Sonics, who banned it against them. Sonics never play Cafe, so I'm sure Xset knew that and they didn't waste a ban, so it's effectively their permanent ban. Probably we won't be playing either of these unless they want to really surprise their opponent. This is maybe the game to pull out a surprise map, but considering how much they've banned it, probably not. Chalet and Theme Park, and keep in mind I've ordered them as we go down. I think they're progressively more likely to be played, so I think maybe it'll be Oregon, Border, or Villa. My guess was Villa. Okay, so Chalet, Astralis has banned it 5 times. The only time that they played it, they lost it, and Xset, they did take a loss on it, or right here rather, and then they massively improved really good against a really good Chalet team. So probably Astralis doesn't want to take Xset there. Theme Park, sort of the opposite, where Xset hasn't played it. They've banned it 6 times. so against everyone except for also the Sonics, and then a good win by Astralis on it against Parabellum right here. Yeah, so any map that one team has played and the other team hasn't, it's possible that the team hasn't played it will want to pull it out because they have VOD on their opponents don't have VOD on them, but because they were solid wins on Chalet and Theme Park, it seems a little bit less likely. Maybe if they were like shakier for them to start with. Okay, and then Bank, we haven't seen Astralis play Bank, but we have seen Xset play on it. It's similar to Chalet, where they lost initially and then they got a fairly solid win. This game, I think, could have been closer, but it didn't end up being a pretty dominant scoreline, and so maybe Astralis might not want to go there. They've only banned it, I guess, 4 times, so 4 out of 7, it's still quite a few, but so maybe they might not want to take it there, but I do think it's more likely that this is one of the maps that they saved and they'll try to surprise Xset on it because they have 2 instances of having VOD on them, so maybe, but I think slightly less likely. Skyscraper, Xset hasn't played it, and it's sort of like Bank for Astralis. They've banned it 4 times, their opponents have played it, but they were really good on it the only time, and they've had a lot of time to review this VOD, but it's also possible that Astralis has changed their strats, developed new strats or whatever, and it was a 7-1 really dominant, so I feel like not Skyscraper. I'm imagining Oregon, Border, or Villa, probably in that order. Oregon, least likely, Border, and then Villa most likely. Not 100%. This also depends on who bans first. That slightly changed a little bit. When I was predicting, Xset versus Dark Zero, I basically had it all correct, but I think it might have been exactly as I predicted it if the other team had banned first, so slight deviation, so I think I did a really good job on that. Okay, so Oregon, Astralis has played it, really dominant versus Mirage, but that's Mirage. And then Shaky against Dark Zero did go to overtime, whereas Xset's only game on it is a 7-0, and Xset has not banned it, so that makes it seem like they're really confident on it. Maybe if they'd banned it a few times, I think this was more likely, but the fact that their only game is a 7-0, they've never banned it, maybe because they just assumed that other teams would be scared to play them on it, and so a lot of teams probably first banned it anyway, so I think least likely of the 3, but also possible. And then Border, so we have seen Astralis play on it. They beat Space Station. It was close. It's Space Station. They're a good team, but still a victory is solid. And then no plays by Xset, so it's sort of like some of the other maps where maybe they've sort of saved it, and I think this is the most likely because this was the closest result of all of those maps, so maybe this is where Xset pulls it out. I think it's possible, and maybe if Astralis has the last vote, if it's between Villa and Border, maybe they'll opt for Border. And then finally, I have Villa. So each of these teams have played on it, and then they've both been quite good on it. So a 7-1 victory by Astralis over TSM and a 7-2 victory over Mirage by Xset. So I think the TSM win is obviously better. It's a 7-1 versus 7-2, and TSM has, even though they lost to Mirage and they only have 1 more point than Mirage, they've still looked like probably the better team than Mirage. They definitely have the better pedigree. So maybe this would slightly advantage Astralis, and I think the map pool overall just like slightly advantage towards Astralis anyways. So that's where I'm predicting that we go for that last game, and I guess I'll go back to the graphic really quickly to talk about my final thoughts and whatever. And okay, so maybe I didn't say it explicitly, but yeah, I'm going with Astralis. I think they're the favorite. I do think Xset could pull it out, but probably if their streak is going to end anywhere, it's against these guys, and if not against these guys, then against Oxygen. They unfortunately have a very backloaded schedule in terms of difficulty of games. That might not have been totally apparent at the beginning of the stage, but now obviously it's the top 2 teams with the most points that they have to fight, and they need to probably get a few points on the board, otherwise they might be passed up by too many teams. They might drop out of that top 4, so they're both fighting for quite a lot. I suppose Xset is fighting for more because Astralis is pretty well confirmed. I'm going to go with Astralis though. I think they've just been the better team overall, maybe not by a massive margin. So one more time to recap, we have Oxygen over Dark Zero, Space Station over Sonics, Parabellum over TSM, Beast Coast over Mirage, and Astralis versus Xset. I think this is actually the same thing as yesterday. For the top 4, I picked the guys on the right, and then the last game is the guys on the left. So yeah, that's what we're rocking with. Let's see if we can get another 5 out of 5. If we do get a 5 out of 5, maybe it's not the most exciting day of games, but maybe we can get an overtime. Yesterday we didn't get any overtimes, even though we got a couple of 7-5, so we had some close games. But all right, so I guess that's gonna do it. I will catch you guys in the next video, whichever video that ends up being.